Again, we are embroiled, are we not, in Boris Gate, Partygate once again, and it's all the front pages, an awful lot of them certainly, are about whether or not Boris Johnson broke lockdown rules. Now, this is a fresh set of allegations. We previously, of course, have had those allegations about breaching the rules in number 10 Downing Street. However, this is about breaching of the rules in Chequers. The allegation is that Boris Johnson had friends and family visiting his official country residence in Chequers during the COVID pandemic. By the way, as early as June 2020, so in the very first lockdown, when many people who perhaps later were a little bit more relaxed about the rules certainly were still obeying the rules. He, though, has hit out what he called a bizarre and unacceptable set of new claims and is threatening to sue the government because the Cabinet Office, he says, were politically motivated in a stitch-up because they passed on the information they found in his Prime Ministerial diaries to the police without informing him. They've gone to the Metropolitan Police in London and Thames Valley Police, the local police force for Chequers. His lawyers said that all of the events that took place were lawful and he did not break the law. Of course, that information also passed on to the Privileges Committee. That, of course, the committee of MPs led by Harriet Harman that is still investigating whether or not Boris Johnson deliberately misled the House of Commons when he denied any COVID breaches or any parties had taken place that he was aware of or attended during lockdown when he spoke to Parliament. So let's talk about all of this with my guest who's joining me all this morning, commentator Sam Armstrong. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
I think you and I are going to take a very different view on this. But before I get to you, I'm going to ask our audience the question I'm asking this morning. I'm fascinated to know what you think. Boris Johnson facing the police investigation over these fresh claims of breaking lockdown rules. He says this is a politically motivated stitch-up. Is he right? Are we in Suella Braverman territory? You know, this is just the Cabinet Office lawyers going, we've got him back to rights again. Here we go. Let's stitch him up so he can't ever come back as a Prime Minister. Or should he be investigated? Is it fair? Did the Cabinet Office lawyers do the right thing? I want to know from you. Do you tweet me at TalkTV? Text the word talk to 87222. Sam Armstrong, what's your answer to that question?
Look, this is civil servants that never liked Boris Johnson in the first place, trawling back 2 years, running their own Keystone Cops investigation into what he was doing. And I just think it fits a pattern. We saw Dominic Raab, we saw Suella Braverman, we saw the head of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission this week. What do they all have in common? They are all right-wingers. They all have a problem with the civil service. They come up, they cook up these allegations, one after another, after another, after another, into these people. In the words of one recently deceased paedophile, can you tell what it is yet? It's a witch hunt.
God, I'm tasteless as I was, I'm still going to laugh. I think, Rolf Harris dead, world a better place is what I would say to that. They say it's a witch hunt. Now, I think there is a very, very big difference between some allegations against Dominic Raab. We know that an awful lot of the claims that were made against him were not upheld. People who were making claims were not even in the room with him, ever never worked with him. And frankly, a lot of the stuff that we saw in the newspapers ahead of that bullying investigation into him was frankly a load of tosh. The Suella Braverman thing, Minister walks into office and says, I've got a speeding fine. Does anyone know if I can get one of these one-on-one things? Can you have a look into it? I'm sorry, in fact, if people think that's a resigning offence, they're an idiot, as far as I'm concerned. I think most of us would probably have done the same thing. Shouldn't do anything wrong, anything illegal at all. This, though, is different. Now, we know Boris Johnson broke lockdown rules. People who think these were minor rules, it didn't matter. People weren't allowed to see their family and friends even when they were dying and sick. People committed suicide. People have mental health problems. People's lives were ruined. Their businesses ruined. Their relationships, their marriages ruined. For rules which Boris Johnson told us were absolutely vital, which we know he was breaking all along. Now, the claim has always been from him, it was all, I never lied to Parliament, it was all, I was acting legally at all times. I think that's an absolute big load of cobblers. Let's go with cobblers. And I know, there's an awful lot of stuff that you can say, well, the police only find him for one thing. Yeah, Sue Gray pulled her punches on that research. The key thing about this is, this wasn't lawyers looking for some more dodgy stuff. These were Cabinet Office lawyers who were paid by taxpayers at Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister's instructions, to basically go through all of Boris Johnson's records as Prime Minister to prepare for him to attend the COVID inquiry, the investigation into decision-making around COVID and the policies that led to it. They are basically, to all intents and purposes, supposedly on Boris Johnson's side. They were legally required, or certainly under the code, the Civil Service Code required, having found evidence of criminal activity, and it was a criminal act, to break COVID rules, that they were required to pass that on to the police. They've also passed it on to the Privileges Committee of MPs in the House of Commons as well in the last week as well. If they found evidence of wrongdoing, and they are lawyers, they are required to pass that on.
No, they're not. They're not required to pass it on. And if you go and tell your lawyer, if you get caught speeding and you go and tell your lawyer, oh, actually,
no,
2
but
years
they're not
ago,
his personal lawyers.
Well, that's right, but they're still under no obligation to shop him in. They're certainly under no obligation to shop him into the parliamentary committee. And this is the thing. These people, they say, the civil service say, we're on your side, or they say, we're neutral. Then 6 months later, they go and get a job working for the leader of the opposition as his chief of staff. It's a joke. It's a farce. Now, I agree with you. The rules were stupid in the first place, although credit to Boris Johnson, the Matt Hancock text did to some extent demonstrate that he was pushing against it. Can I just say, I'm so fed up of this. The amount of Tories I hear saying this, defending Boris Johnson on the basis that, oh, well, you know, but he was pushed into this by, you know, by Whitty and Vallance and Matt Hancock, and I mean, you know, he was the sodding Prime Minister. It was his sodding decision, and he chose to lock us down, ruin people's lives, ruin the economy, ruin children's education, stop families from seeing each other when they were dying. People weren't able to get married. People weren't able to have children because they weren't allowed to see each other, because they weren't living in the same home as each other, even though they'd been dating for 2 years. And people weren't allowed to travel and see family abroad when they were dying. What he did was evil. I will never forgive him. I will never forget. And the idea that he was all pushed into it, no, he was a weak, pathetic charlatan who did the country wrong just because everyone else was doing it in other parts of the world. What isn't good enough for me? I'm never, ever going to forgive this. I think what he did was criminal. I think what the entire government did was criminal. And when people say, "Oh, we can all move on from this," or "Look, to his credit, he wasn't such a lockdown fanatic as Matt Hancock," that's just not good enough in a democracy. It's not good enough. Well, do you know what?
Sorry if I've woken you all up. I still feel strongly about this.
But do you know what, Julia? I'm fed up with powerful people telling me that they're not empowered to do anything. I am fed up, but the last years have been a record, one after another after another. Politicians that stand up to the blob and the civil service in this country, one after another are taken down by malicious leaks that come after them, and then we've got the newspapers of this country, a lobby pack that's all desperate for the next scandal rather than reflecting on the big issues facing this country.
This is true.
That goes for them. And Priti Patel tried to stand up to the Home Office. What happened to her? Boom, gone. Suella Braverman, boom, gone. Dominic Raab,
well, she's
gone.
not gone yet. I mean, she's hanging on. But I mean, but no, I think it is possible to hold into your head that at the same time that there is a politically motivated civil service and lawyers for the Cabinet Office, and that they are absolutely trying to stitch up a Tory government, and particularly Brexiteer ministers. I did not hate Boris Johnson with a passion for Brexit. Obviously not. I was very pleased he helped deliver it, and both with the government and with the Vote Leave campaign. But I mean, I do hate someone with a passion who didn't live up to any of the professed principles that he claimed to have had in terms of freedom and the like, in terms of what he did to us over the lockdown years. I despise and loathe hypocrisy in politicians. Will always expose it, whoever it is. It is possible to hold in your head at the same time that Boris is a deeply flawed and I would say morally corrupt man. I mean, the man holds there is nothing that I think you could ever trust him on, whether you were married to him or voting for him or working in his government. And you can also hold that in his mind and also say this is also probably an attempt to stitch up. Does any of it matter now? That's the question. There are claims that he still thinks, after making £5 million in his speeches and appearances since leaving office, that he still harbours this Churchillian urge to return. I think that's the theory for me. Churchill came back, I can come back, and I can basically, you know, my reputation will be back as I come back as another roaring success with another fantastic majority after Rishi Sunak loses the next election. But he still harbours this urge to sort of a reincarnation, and that this is an attempt to kill him off altogether. I mean, does it matter? I mean, it's, you know, we're 2 years on from the last claim of these lockdown breaches in May 2021. Does any of it matter?
Well, I don't think Rishi Sunak is feeling particularly sorry for Boris. I think he's rather enjoying the fact that, you know, potential rival is out of the way. I would compare and contrast the reaction between these breaches of lockdown rules to something like politicians getting speeding tickets, or like the security minister banned from driving for being on the phone while he's driving. Nobody ever turns around and says, you broke the law, you've got to go for that. There's a slight difference there between tickets. Now, I know in Boris's case, obviously, he set the rules, but you've got Home Office ministers breaking rules that they themselves are in charge of enforcing, and, you know, politicians. But I really think unless there is a line drawn in the sand now, and I mean now, on the civil service being able to refer people to the police. But why is it in the newspapers? Why is it in the newspapers?
How did it get into the newspapers?
Who's told them?
Yeah.
Why is it in the Times first? Great newspaper, but the civil service's favourite newspaper. Why is it there again? I can hazard a guess, but this country's run by politicians, supposedly, and not by the officials that work for them.
Is it anymore? Well, you can say something of a heated debate to start the show. I'd love to hear from you. Is Boris Johnson right? Is this a politically motivated stitch-up, or should he be investigated? Maybe you just said, look, I just don't care. I cared at the time. I don't care now. He's gone. Lockdown's over. And again, this is my worry, you know, if you think lockdowns are over forever and ever in our lifetime, I mean, good luck. Good luck for thinking that optimistically. I am much more cynical about this. But do get in touch. Tweet me at TalkTV. Text the word TALK to 87222. We will look at the front pages after this. This is Talk Breakfast.